So the quiz, I want you to keep score for yourself. I won't even ask you to guess aloud, but we'll talk a bit about your reflections at the end. So I want to share my screen. That should work. So here's your first question. What percentage of the world's population lives in the United States? 5%, 12%, 19%, 25%. And the answer is, again, because we're not asking you to guess out loud, is 5%. So that's a relevant question because now we want to ask what percentage of the world's incarcerated population lives in the United States. All right, 5%, 12%, 19%, or 25%. Many of us know this statistic. We actually have 25% of the world's incarcerated population. That's currently more than 2.1 million people. It's 1 out of every 150 people or so in this country. It's the highest incarceration rate in the world. And that's not even counting the other kinds of detention we do, like immigration detention centers, which usually has a daily population of another 20,000 or so. Next question. How many people were in prison, well, US prisons and jails in 1972? 200,000, 650,000, 900,000, or 1.2 million? And the answer is 200,000. Right. The tremendous growth in our incarcerated population from 200,000 to 2.1 million is almost incredible, almost unbelievable. And it's a result of many, many factors. This law and order campaign that began in the 70s, the war on drugs, the institution of mandatory minimums, all kinds of things are factors in this tremendous growth of prisons and the prison industrial complex. In 2018, how many people were barred from voting because of a prior felony conviction? 1.3 million, 2.6 million, 6.1 million, or 9.5 million? The answer is 6.1 million. Prior to Florida's Amendment 4, which had made a lot of press, and after its passage, 1.4 million theoretically became eligible to vote. And then there was Iowa's executive order, which came after that. There are now only a couple states that still permanently bar people under all circumstances with a felony conviction. They can never vote again. But they all have significant restrictions. Well, not all. There's Maine and Vermont and the District of Columbia, which have no restrictions. In fact, you can still vote in prison with a felony conviction. But of course, that's a fairly small sampling of the United States. A couple more. How many students in the United States attend a school that employs a school police officer but no guidance counselor? A, none, because it's against US educational policy. B, 20,000 people. C, 300,000 people. Or D, 1.6 million students. The answer is 1.6 million students. And there are only about 50 million students in US public schools, so it's a significant percentage, or certainly a recordable one. Black students represented 15% of the student population during the 15-16 school year. That's the most recent I could find the statistic for. They made up what percentage of the students arrested or referred to law enforcement? 15%, 22%, 31%, 45%, right? Proportional, A would be proportional, and B, C, and D are all more than that. And because we all are quite aware of the systemic racism that goes all the way back to the schools and all the way through the school to prison pipeline, we know it's going to be higher than 15%. And the answer is 31%. And research confirms that Black students don't misbehave at higher rates than their white peers, but they do represent 31% of the students who have been arrested or referred to law enforcement during the school year. Some closer to home related statistics, although not about students. There were 3 million criminal cases filed in Cook County between 2000 and 2018. And the average, on average per year, there were about 60% filed against Black people, even though they only make up a quarter of the population in Cook County. And the numbers don't seem to be trending in the direction of equity. In the early part of that window in 2000, there were 57% of those arrests were Black people, and I'm sorry, criminal cases filed. And in 2018, it was 65%, so it was going up. Another related statistic close to home, this one's about Cook County Jail. Right, jail is where you go for short stays or in pretrial detention and those kinds of things. Prisons are where you go for longer stints. Cook County Jail, Black people are incarcerated at 17 times the rate of white people. It's the largest gap we've had since 1990. This is the last question. Which of the following are true? States spend more per person in prison than per pupil in school. Many prisons contract with phone companies that charge prisoners above market rates. You can be incarcerated for being unable to pay civil fines and fees. So just number one and number two and number three, or all of the above. The answer is all of the above. In Illinois, we spend about $45,000 per year per prisoner, and we spend $15,741 per pupil. We could actually send prisoners to a private college in Illinois, the tuition anyway, for less money than it costs to keep them in prison. So that's number one. Number two, it's just a fact that we allow in many states, many prisons contract for all kinds of services. I mean, and one of them is phone service. And a lot of these places charge this critical, crucial link to home, to family, to friends costs more than it would if you were free. And the third one is the sort of the most disturbing, maybe not the most disturbing, they're all disturbing, but you can be incarcerated for being unable to pay fines and fees, and it can happen a whole lot of different ways. One is pay only probation, which a lot of states are using. It's promoted as incarceration alternatives, offender funded. Georgia sends 80% of its misdemeanor probationers to these for-profit probation companies, and if you can't pay them, you can actually be arrested and incarcerated for it. And it's a terrible system. But we also have lots of other systems where, we know from that in Cook County, we have lots of people in Cook County Jail who are detained. They haven't had a trial yet, but they can't make bail. So they're detained in the meantime. We have entire systems that are dependent on fines from poor people. We also have lots of, by the way, linking back, we have in some states, convicted felons who've served their time, et cetera, and done everything except pay fines, still can't vote. So just the statistics around these things are disturbing. I'm going to stop sharing and ask you, so first of all, how'd you do on the quiz? Here, this is not a rhetorical question. What do these things say about our justice system? Right, so think of it like a Torah text. Take these facts and think, okay, we're going to drosh these facts. What do they say about the nature of our justice system? What are some things we could draw out from the facts?